is to read all of God's Word, and we do this with reading of the what's called the Interlinear Bible. This is my seminary one. It's a little beat up, but it's from the original Greek language in the New Testament, and then we translate it word for word into English, and then put it into sentence form or structure, looking at a variety of translations. So you're welcome to participate by grabbing a Bible and turning to Acts chapter 7. That's where we're at today. Just as a kind of a visualization, this is what it looks like from Greek down to English as a subtext. Hey, Pastor Deb, good to see you tonight, as well as others who will be joining us, whether it be here on YouTube Live or on Facebook Live. It's always a joy to have you. So let's look at Acts chapter 7. Hey, Desi, good to see you tonight as well. Nancy and others as well. Looking forward to seeing you. Some messages there. Then we're going back. Anyway, Acts chapter 7, beginning in verse 17. We left it last night where Stephen is speaking before what's called the Sanhedrin, or the religious council. And the religious council is frustrated with him, and particularly the other disciples, but him particularly because of what they're doing in terms of publicly and boldly proclaiming the gospel. And so what we learned last night is he spoke in front of the Sanhedrin and was kind of calling them out, so to speak, but then switched to kind of telling a history. And so he's been going through the Hebrew history. Last night we got up all the way to the part where Moses was then entering in. So he's doing a great job of kind of reminding the religious council that he knows about the Messiah. He knows the history of the covenantal people, beginning with Abraham, working his way through Jacob and Joseph, and now he's picking up after they've been enslaved in Egypt. Kathos de enegizen, ho chronos tes apengelias. So it says, as now was drawing near the time. Chronos is chronological time, and they have kairos, which is kind of a God's time. And so, and now was drawing near the time of the promise. So that epangelias is a promise, or similar to the word covenant we looked at last night. His, that was homogalesin, that had made whole theos by God. And that word homo is also unity or singular, has that kind of context meaning as well, to Abraham. Exusin ho leos kai epothene. So again, we have the promises made by God to Abraham, and increased the people, and they multiplied in Egypt. So what's happening is the promise to Abraham translated to Jacob, and from Jacob to Joseph. Joseph brought the family to Egypt because of the famine, but the promise contained was still there from Abraham to the people of God now in Egypt. But during that season, and it'll be close to 400 years, they multiplied. In other words, they continued to grow as a nation. Verse 18. Arche hu eneste basileas, heteros ep Egypton. So basically, until there rose a king over Egypt, has uk edeton Joseph, who did not know Joseph. In other words, generations passed, and the story about Joseph saving the people no longer was being told. Verse 19. Hatos kata physomenos, he dealt treacherously, or he was deceptive. To ganos himon ekokosen. So again, this is Stephen explaining to the religious council. He's saying, remember, they were treacherous with our race, with the Hebrew people of us, that he mistreated us, ekokosen, tus pateros, and the fathers of us. So he's explaining this, which they already know, but he's like recanting it so they understand that he knows. Making them poisonte braphate, like little children or infants. Ektheta ato aistome zugensithe. The infants, and caused them to abandon them so that they could not live. Again, we'll read it now in the RSV so we can kind of get this understanding of what was taking place in Egypt. So, but at the time of the promise drew near, which God had granted to Abraham, the people grew and multiplied in Egypt, till there rose over Egypt another king who had not known Joseph. And he dealt craftily, or it says here, schemed, some would say, or treacherous is another term you could use for that word, with our race, and forced our fathers to expose their infants that they might be kept alive. At this time, Moses was born and was beautiful before God. So he's explaining how Moses came to be. So continue to follow along if you like the word. Cynthia, we have anyone else that likes to join us tonight. We continue to look at that. So 20, it's in Enho Cairo. The time was Moses was born. He was beautiful to God. He was brought up, and Trace Minas 3 months in the house of his father, two Patras, and so, but now he's getting louder. People might notice him. So, Ek Tethantos de Ato and Naleto. So, having been set outside, he took up him in the Thagatar Pharaoh. So, he was given to the daughter of Pharaoh and brought up for herself a son. So, again, back to 21. In terms of the translation of the RSV, it says, and when he was exposed, Pharaoh's daughter adopted him and brought him up as her own son. So basically, the word exposed or set outside, and the term brought him up for herself would be similar to our term that we would call adoption. 22. Kai epiduthe Moses in passe Sophia. So, and Moses was instructed in the wisdom of the Egyptians. Ende dinatos, and he was mighty in the logos, which means the words. So he was good and mighty in the words, and kai ergos, the deeds of him. So again, in the English translation of the RSV, it says that Moses was instructed in all wisdom of the Egyptians, even as mighty in his words and deeds. All right. So then we go on to say, verse 23. Hoste apiruto, when then was fulfilled to him the Tesseracantes, the 40 years, chronos, again, a period again, anabe, it came, epatin cardian, into the, it's interesting, cardian is on the mind of him, and literally the word cardias or cardians can also be referenced as the heart of him. So let's look that one up, because that's kind of interesting. 2588 if you have your Strong's Concordance. 2588. Let's look here what it says in verse 23, the King James. It says, and when he was full 40 years, it came into his heart to visit his brethren, the children of Israel. See, that seems to make more sense. Cardias. Let's see what the NIV says. It says, when Moses was 40 years, he decided to visit his fellow Israelites. It just says he decided. It doesn't say if he heard from his head or his heart. The Living Bible, in verse 23, says, one day as he was nearing his 40th birthday, it came into his mind to visit his brothers. So here it references the mind. So we have the heart in the King James. We have the NIV, it just says he decided. The Living Bible says that it was in his mind. The RSV says, when he's 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brethren. So I guess I would say that the word heart seems to be the more accurate Greek translation. Not sure why some are saying the word mind, but I would believe that the King James and the RSV are more accurate by saying the word heart. All right. Verse 24, Kai Idan Tina. So I always say Idan, I'm looking at something. So, and having seen a certain one at a kumenon, being wronged, in other words, someone who was being wronged or beaten, Minato, he defended him, Kai epoisen, and did ekdikisen, which is the word for vengeance or revenge. So having seen a certain one being wronged, he defended him and did vengeance for the one. That's the literal translation. Being oppressed, having struck down the Egyptian. So he saw this one being oppressed and gave revenge for him. Nancy Fuller says thoughts or feelings. Deb Marzahn has the literal translation heart. So probably thoughts or feelings. You could think of a thought as more the head, the feelings more the heart. Either way, he was making a decision, if you will. All right, verse 24, let's read it in the RSV. It says, and seeing one of them being wronged, he defended the oppressed man and avenged him by striking the Egyptian. And so we have a problem here. Let's look at verse 25. And Marzahn, he was supposing now to Sunanai Tus, to understand the Adolphus, the brothers of him, that by God the hand is giving them soterian salvation to them. But they did not understand. So 25. He supposed that his brethren understood that God was, in other words, the brothers that were enslaved, giving them deliverance by his hand, but they did not understand. In verse 26, Ti te epiose hamera. So on the following day, Ophe, he appeared to those who were Mechamoines, those that were quarreling, again, more Israelites, and Kai Sinalesan, and he urged them to Erene, which is the word for peace. He said, so he sees two other Israelites fighting. He urges them to have a sense of peace. And he said, brothers, why are you wronging one another? And verse 27 goes on to say, Hode Edican, the one, however, mistreating his pleason, his neighbor, pushed him away, having said, Tis se kedatisen, who appointed you, Archante, ruler and dicast and judge over Hemon, over us. So in 27, again, it goes on to say, but the man who is wronging his neighbor thrust him aside, saying, who are you, a ruler and a judge, to judge over us? Do you want to kill me as you killed the Egyptian yesterday? So he calls him out, basically, right? He's saying, okay, I saw and I know what you did yesterday. You killed the Egyptian. Now that you're mad at me, you're going to kill me too. 28. And the land may say, Thilas, desire the same way you put to death Annalise. We get the word annihilation, right? Ekthis ton Egyptian, the Egyptian. Verse 29. Ephagen de Moses, or Moshi, ento logo atato. So then Moses fled at this remark, and Egeneto became exiled, which is the Parakois, in the land of Midian, where he begot 2 sons. So again, we'll read this in the RSV. It says, at this retort, in other words, after this comment by this other Israelite, Moses fled and became as an exile in the land of Midian, where he became the father of 2 sons. Thomas Xavier, what are you reading? Reading the New Testament Greek Bible and translating or interpreting as we go, word for word, into the English, and then we're looking at various translations. Why is Esau reading our Bible? Lawrence Adams, no one is saved until the end of Matthew. Why is Esau reading our Bible? I have no understanding what that means, Lawrence. You have to, I don't know. Esau. Interesting. So let's go back to verse 30. Perhaps you know the original language, Lawrence or Thomas. So let's go back to the Greek, which is the original language of the New Testament. Hode Muses Adon Ethelomazon do Horama. So he's marveling. Ethelomazon means to marvel or to wonder. To Horoma, which is where we get the oroma, is a vision or to see something. Proskeromeno de ato kedenoise. Again, another word for kind of a vision or to behold or to see something. So literally, the translation from Greek to English is, and Moses, having seen, marveled at the vision coming near of them to behold, there was the phone voice of the Kurio, the Lord. So literal translation. But let's look at what a Revised Standard Translation looks like. We can look at King James as well. It says, when Moses saw it, he wondered at the sight, and he drew near to look at it. So basically, we see this flame. It says, now when 40 years had passed, an angel appeared to him in the wilderness of Mount Sinai, in a flame of fire in a bush. When Moses saw it and wondered at the sight, and as he drew near to look, the voice of the Lord came. So let's look at that again in some other translations. This is it's called a parallel Bible. And the parallel Bible here has 4 translations, the King James, NIV, Living Bible, and Revised Standard. The King James has translated the Greek this way. And when 40 years were expired, there appeared to him in the wilderness of Mount Sinai an angel of the Lord in a flame of fire in a bush. The NIV says, after 40 years had passed, an angel appeared to Moses in the flames of a burning bush in the desert near Mount Sinai. So they all say Mount Sinai, and they all represent an angel there. The Living Bible says, 40 years in the desert near Mount Sinai, an angel appeared to him in a flame of fire in a bush. Revised Standard says, now when 40 years had passed, an angel appeared to him in the wilderness of Mount Sinai in a flame of fire in a bush. They all go on to say, when Moses saw it, he wondered at the sight. And as he drew near to behold it, the voice of the Lord came unto him. The NIV says, as he went over to look more closely, he heard the Lord's voice. The Living Bible says, Moses saw it and wondered what it was. And as he ran to see, the voice of the Lord called out to him. The Revised Standard says, and he wondered at the sight, and as he drew near to look, the voice of the Lord came. So we have all those same kind of discussions. All right. Interesting comments sometimes by immature people. All right, let's keep moving on. So we have verse 32 where he says, again, this is, Philip continuing to talk towards the Sanhedrin, explaining the history of the Jewish people. So he can tie this in. The eventual goal is to tie this in that they were looking for a Messiah through these years. But now the Messiah has been found. So ego ho theos ton pateron. So I am the God of my fathers. Su ho theos Abraham, of the God of Abraham. Kai Isaac, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Tromos. Terrified de genomus, Moses was then terrified, and he dared not katokanose, kata noese, to look at. He dared not look at it, at this burning bush. He knew that it was God. So verse 33. Ipen de atoho kyrios. Then the Lord said to him, Lysen to hypodema, take off your sandals put on your feet. Take your sandals off your feet. Suhogar tapas. For the tapas, we get the word topography for this place on which you, hestikos, which you stand, is hagia, which means holy, gay, which is ground. So this place which you stand is holy ground. 33. And the Lord said to him, take off your shoes from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Verse 34. I have seen the ill treatment of my people that are in Egypt and heard their groaning, and I've come down to deliver them. And now come, I will send you to Egypt. Mike Hawk says it was a bush. It was a burning bush, you're correct. And it says that it was on fire. So the little word there, if you'd like to know, Mike, we can look it up for you. He saw a batu, which is the word 942. If Pastor Deb or Nancy or someone has a Strong's in Court wants to look it up, it was called a batu in the Greek. 942 is the word in the Strong's in Court. So it translates Greek words into English if someone would like to look it up. But it's most commonly translated as a bush. I can look it up again. Verse 30 says, almost every translation says, and when the 40 years an angel of the Lord came to the fire in a bush, burning bush. So the fire in the bush, burning bush, flame of fire in the bush, and a flame of fire in the bush. So they all say it was a bush. So I guess I would agree with you, Mike. I don't think there's any other translation that says it any differently. Verse 34, having seen the oppression, kekosen to leo, having seen the oppression of the people of me in Egypt, and of the stenagomo, the groans of them, kind of the word agony of them, I have ukase, we have the word acoustic again, I have heard and I have kataben, I have come down to deliver them. And now I will send you to Egypt. So the apostelo, which is the word for send, apostles are sent ones, right? So now we're in 35. Tutan ton musi, or moshi, hon Ernie Santo, they rejected him, Apontus, and having said, who you have you, Keta Tison, appointed ruler and judge. So again, 35, let's read it in the RSV translation. It says, that Moses, whom they refused, saying, who made you a ruler and a judge? Just like when he was with them and the Israelites, they were saying that. Now he's in the part near Mount Sinai, and he's explaining all that's going on. But again, they don't believe him. So God sent both a ruler and a deliverer by the hand of the angel that appeared to him in the bush. He led them out, one having performed wonders and signs in Egypt and at the Red Sea and in the wilderness for 40 years. So again, Simon is basically is summarizing this. He's trying to help them to understand exactly what took place in the history there, and he's trying to remind them that they're the Israelites. They all come from the same tribe. They all, not Simon, Stephen. Stephen. I said Simon, like in Simon Peter. So Stephen is now explaining all this to, again, the religious council, and also known as the Sanhedrin. And this ruling council has been listening to this and how he now brought them out of Egypt. He goes on to explain even more about Moses. So I think we left it. The Red Sea, there's 37. Hatos esten ho Moshi, epastos hois Israel. This is the Moses having said this to the sons of Israel. Prophetine, a prophet for you, Hymen Anastase will raise up by Theos, by God. Ekton Adolphon, out of the brothers of you, like me. So he's reminding that Moses said someday there'll be another prophet. This prophet will be raised up by God, similar to me, Moses, that will lead the people. This is the one, genomenos, having been in the congregation, ecclesia. Congregation means church. Congregation, ecclesia means the one's called out into the wilderness. The one called out or calling into the wilderness. Meta to angelo, with the angel speaking lalantos to him in the Mount Sinai. And of the pateran, the fathers of us, who received logia, or oracles, or words of wisdom, living to give us. Okay, so 38, let's read that in the RSV translation. So this is what Moses, who said to the Israelites, God will raise up for you a prophet from your brethren as he raised me up. This is he who was in the congregation in the wilderness with the angel that spoke to him at Mount Sinai, and with our fathers, and he received living oracles to give to us. Verse 39, our fathers refused to obey him, but thrust him aside, and in their hearts they turned to Egypt. So again, he's sharing the whole story of what happened to them in the wilderness. It said they were thelisan, not willing to hypikue, be obedient to their pateras, to the fathers of us, but they aposanto, they thrust away kai, and they estrephasan, turned back their hearts, cardias, unto Egypt. Verse 40. Ipantus, having said to Aaron, poison, make us theos, gods, who will go before us, prapaprosantai, Heman. And as for Moses, this is the one who brought us out from the land of Egypt. We don't know what happened to him. So if you remember, Moses went up on Mount Sinai to talk to God, to receive the law of God, the Ten Commandments in particular. And when he was there, he was gone for a long time. So they said to Aaron, who was the chief priest at the time, traveling with Moses and the group, why don't you make to us other gods so we can worship them? And Kai, Emma, Scopason, and they made a calf in the Chameris in those days and offered a sacrifice to the idol, a dialo, Kai, Euphranto, and they were rejoicing in the ergos, which means the works of their own hands, right? 42, Estro Epson, de God turned away and delivered them to worship the Lord of hosts of heaven, as it has been written in the book of the prophets. Not slain beasts and Theseus sacrifices did you offer to me for 40 years in the wilderness of Israel. So again, he's going on recapping all that took place in Egypt, all that took place when they left Egypt and were in the wilderness wanderings. He goes, I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and Joseph. Moses trembled and dared not to look. And the Lord said to him, that's where he's at the burning bush. Raises up a prophet. Our fathers refused to obey him and thrust him aside. And in their hearts they turned to Egypt, saying to Aaron, make for us gods to go before us. As for this Moses who led us out of the land of Egypt, we don't know what has become of him. And they made a calf in those days and offered a sacrifice to the idol and rejoiced in the work of their hands. But God turned and gave them over to worship the host of heaven. As is written in the book of the prophets, did you offer me slain beasts and sacrifices? 40 years in the wilderness, O house of Israel. So again, what we're seeing here is God speaking and helping them understand that Stephen is helping them understand that God is trying to lead them to the promised land, and yet they keep making these sinful mistakes. Our fathers have the tent of wilderness and witness and the wilderness, even as the one who spoke to Moses directed him to make it, according to the pattern that he had seen. Our fathers in turn brought in with Joshua when they dispossessed the nations which God thrust out before our fathers. And so it was until the days of David, who found favor in the sight of God and asked leave to find out a habitation for the God of Jacob. So he's going through all the wilderness wanderings, going on to David. And we're going to end there because then we jump into Solomon, the building of the temple. And so we'll take a break there and pick it up tomorrow night when Solomon begins to take over after David. So we'll pick up tomorrow in verse 44. All right? We've read quite a while tonight, but it's a long section in Acts chapter 7. So we took a big bite tonight, and we'll finish the rest of it tomorrow. Let's close with the words of God that Jesus taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, holy be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For yours is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. All right, take care and God bless. And I will meet with Lawrence Adams offline to chat with him. Bye-bye.